So I had a discussion video yesterday about E3 and my hype moments for it and everything, but what about it as a whole? Was there some terrible moments? Was there some bad moments? Who might have potentially been a favorite? Not just my opinion here, but as well as another with Billybo10k. I hope I said that right, by the way.
Yes, you did. Thank you very much. So many people get that name wrong.
Billy's another gamer like myself. He's much more, he has much more gaming content than me, by the way, so you should check him out with his channel. But Billy, did you want to say hello and introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Billy. I'm a gamer. I have nothing else in my life. This is the only thing that matters. And E3 is like the Olympics of gaming, so of course, I've got tons of opinions. But yeah, I'm hyped to talk about E3 with you, man.
There was still some good this year, but this is for sure not the best E3, at least in my opinion. But I still think all the publishers did what they, well, we'll get into two of them in particular in a moment. I'm a little bit, two of them in particular in a moment.
Yeah.
But, so we're gonna go show by show here, and then by the end of it, give our, I know some people are kind of bitter about this, but we're gonna give our personal takes on who we felt was best in show. Maybe we could also say worst in show as well.
Oh, well, I already know exactly who that's going to, no question.
Microsoft, you know, one of the big three, and to me, the one that kind of really stepped up last year and really, from what I was watching, left such a good impression on people and showed such great sign of improvement. And in my opinion, they had an extremely, what I'm calling, safe show this year. I feel like they did a good job flushing out what they promised. You know, they promised us a lot more exclusives, which they were showing and stuff. They showed a lot more from their initiative program with all the studios they acquired. And they did a nice thing at the beginning by saying, you know, if you see Xbox Game Studios, this is gonna launch on Game Pass. So I was like, that's a neat element, because if we see anything we like here, we know that's launching on Game Pass, so that's cool. It was definitely not as flashy as last year though, and that's why I could understand a lot of folks might have been underwhelmed with the show, but what are your thoughts on the just Xbox's conference?
I find it surprising that it wasn't as flashy as last year, because arguably what they showed should have been more flashy. I mean, we got the release date for Cyberpunk 2077 and Keanu Reeves came out. We had that amazing Gears of War 5 underneath the stage set, and for some reason, I feel like they were banking on that to really pop and kind of wow people, and I don't think it did. Like, they even revealed details about their newest console project, Scarlett, and I think everyone, once they came out of Microsoft's conference, they completely forgot about it. And my big issue was that almost every game they showed, we had either seen or knew about before, or it was a 2020 release. So there wasn't much down the pipeline for this year for Microsoft, and that's very frustrating because they showed like 60 games, and yet only maybe like 5 or 10 of them are actually coming out this year. I
actually was really happy with the Scarlett, and I'm still thinking about it, but that's mostly because I love that they've been embracing this a lot the past couple years about their backwards compatibility and trying to listen to their fan base and stuff and really fix the horrible launch that they have with the Xbox One. But the thing that they seem to be focusing great on is being everywhere as well as having their past with them. And so I love that idea that this wasn't in the show, and so that's why, because a lot of stuff is happening outside the shows, but they address that, like, the Scarlett will still be able to play every single thing that the One can play. And I'm just like, that's great, because PlayStation don't do that, Nintendo don't do that, so...
I find that insane that especially PlayStation, I mean, they've got such a good library of games, and yet they don't do backwards compatibility. I mean, the only problem with Xbox for me is that most of their games you can play them on Windows as well, so I often don't really feel a need to go out and buy their console, because they're just so multi-platform. I mean, I liked Microsoft's presentation this year. I did. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm harping on it a little bit because I think people were a lot down on it because it just wasn't as good as last year's, but that by no means
which was hard to follow up.
Yeah, by no means makes it a bad conference. There were brilliant games.
Exactly. I came out of that show happy, but just not like wowed or whatever like last year. So, and again, just like you said, that doesn't mean it was a bad show. It's just, I just think safe is the best word for it, you know?
Yeah.
And they had so many cinematics. That's like my only issue with the show personally. That's my only issue, is that it was nothing but cinematics.
I'm very tired of the trailers where they will just show you a cinematic, or maybe they'll show you the name of the developer or the name of a person who's working on it, and then expect you to be really hyped. For example, Elden Ring, the game that's being developed by From Software and George R.R. Martin.
Which a lot of people got stoked about, yeah.
I'm stoked that it exists, but I wanted gameplay. I don't think that trailer did anything for me, and From Software is known for their stellar gameplay. Like, almost all of their previous video game reveals, at least for the past few ones they've created, have had that sort of gameplay element to it, and this one just felt missing.
So to wrap that up, like, what would you say was your favorite moment of it and your least favorite moment?
Favorite moment would be Keanu Reeves. I think that was
I'll share. That's okay. Let's one into mine. Yeah. But.
It was quite phenomenal, and I was also happy that Ori finally got a release date. We've been waiting so long for that.
Yeah.
I'm just glad for that. Least favorite. Oh god, what would my least favorite bit be? Probably the fact that they spent way too long on Gears of War 5. I wasn't interested in the game, and it didn't look like.
It didn't even show gameplay, because that's one of their flagships. You know, I would say that's their Zelda. You know, whereas Halo is their Mario.
I just feel like it was a very alienating trailer to anyone who doesn't know what Gears of War is. Like, there was that trailer where the woman was just kind of looking around, and you would see the faces of characters phasing out of her, and it's like, if you don't know what Gears of War is, that is just gonna switch your brain off, and it just went on for too long.
So my favorite moment, I could understand the Keanu Reeves thing. I think that's kind of like everybody's like one of the most high moments. It's so funny though, because it's just an actor, you know? It's like, why would that be a big deal? But on the personal level, I'm just like, I'm insanely stoked about Halo Infinite. So I love seeing the peek at that cinematic, which is apparently confirmed. That's like the intro to the actual game. So. Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, we don't know what console it was running on, though. It could have been running on the Xbox One, or it could have been running on the Scarlett.
We don't, and I'm gonna just not get my hopes up and say that was a polished scene similar to what they did for Halo Reach. They had like a scene that was the introduction to Reach, but it was polished when they showed it at E3. But regardless, looks phenomenal, and I'm glad to at least get something about that game. And I personally kind of love the idea that it's a launch title too, because that'll really help sell the console. But you could still play it on PC.
The original
and
Halo
Xbox.
Was basically what sold the original Xbox, so it feels like it's just coming full circle.
Least favorite moments? For a moment, I thought it was gonna be the Forza Lego car. For a moment.
I love the Forza Lego car.
I loved it once I knew what it was. But at first I was like, oh no, they're pulling it out of another car. Don't do this again. But once they gave context, I was like, okay, now this makes sense.
The moment the context hit, I think me and my friend who was reacting to it just burst out laughing. It was amazing.
Yes. I think I might be with you with Gears 5. I think that really got undersold with it being as much of a flagship as it is. And I think alienated is kind of a good word, but there wasn't any moment in that show that I straight up hated.
I didn't hate anything. There were obviously games that I wasn't necessarily interested in, but like that's a different thing.
And that just goes with any show. Yeah. So moving on, we got Bethesda, who is on a they are on such an interesting path lately. That's the word I'll use. And I don't know, I'll just let you kick this one off. Like, what did you think of Bethesda's show overall?
I mean, Doom Eternal looked good.
Agreed.
That's it.
Agreed.
Doom Eternal looked good. Everything else, I watched it, and I felt absolutely nothing for any of it. It just didn't appeal to me in the slightest. It was a real shame that they confirmed pre-E3 that Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6 weren't going to be there, because I think that's what a lot of people were excited to see more of. Yeah. And then, because they weren't there, what were you left filling the time with? Mobile games.
I am happy that they at least mentioned it, though. Like, I kind of wish Nintendo did that for Metroid Prime 4 and Pikmin 4, but, like, at least they mentioned it, you know, than just ignore it completely.
Yeah.
It might have been a teaser.
Overall, like, the only thing that excited me in that conference was Doom Eternal, and everything else I didn't care for in the slightest.
And Doom Eternal was at the end, too, you know? By the time it came, you're, like, dead.
And it's like an hour-long conference as well, so you have to sit through so much, and and for me, it was really late in the morning as well. Like, I would say it was like 3 a.m. or something, so I was just I was hoping they would reveal something fun, something to keep my attention, and it just never happened.
Yeah, and they had some neat stuff like the Wolfenstein co-op thing. That could be something neat. I want to give my take on this first. I'm really curious about your take, though. I personally am super respectful for how they handled Fallout 76 because I was wondering before this all happened, I'm like, are they going to address it or are they going to pretend it never happened? And I love that they addressed it and they aren't just ignoring it, and they're trying to fix the things other than the technical things, to which that's just something that'll improve over time. But one of the big complaints about that game is that there was nothing to really do in it. And so they're like, here's your NPCs, here's, you can build more stuff, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I know there's a lot of folks that hate the idea of battle royales, but just me personally, I treat battle royales as like a king of the hill, a capture the flag. It's just a game type.
It's a little mini game you have in the main
exactly,
game.
it's an option, you know? Now, if they built an entire Fallout battle royale game, that's a different story, but because it's just part of this game, I'm like, cool, you're adding stuff to do to it. And not only to that, but they commit to it by saying, hey, we know we messed up, but we're adding a lot of stuff this year, and we want to prove ourselves. We're making it free to play for the next week. I'm like, that was awesome. That was a great way to show that you're acknowledging the mistake and you're trying to fix it. But what was your take on that?
I feel like Fallout 76 is probably going to be the new No Man's Sky in terms of how they handle it from launch. No Man's Sky, obviously, we all know how awful it was at launch, and then how they have worked and developed and made the game better, and the game is actually fairly decent now. I think the same is going to happen with Fallout 76. They've realized nobody liked it at launch. They realized they screwed up. They have started working on making it better. I mean, adding NPCs, brilliant start. Adding new modes, great. More stuff to build with, brilliant. And if they can keep this momentum going, then hopefully Fallout 76 can become what they wanted it to be, as opposed to what people are viewing it as at the moment.
Which somebody brought up a neat point, being like, Elder Scrolls Online when it launched was kind of garbage too. And I'm just like, that's a neat point. You know, they've expanded that a lot and keep expanding it and so on. And that's what they, I'm sure, hope to do with 76. I think they said that they want that to be like a 10-year long game or something. So we'll see. We'll see. But I just like how they handled that. And so they started off good, in my opinion, and ended good. But it's just like the hour in between.
In the middle.
Okay, I will give them, though, a lot of people are talking about this Ghosts game, and I personally like this Deathloop idea. I thought that sounded interesting, but it was a cinematic for both of those. It was cinematics.
No gameplay.
Yeah, no gameplay. That's why I'm saying Wolfenstein got some gameplay. We got tons of gameplay for mobile stuff, and for mobile, like...
That platform that all the gamers love. I mean, after last year, you guys do have mobile phones, don't you?
And I will argue that mobile games are becoming a thing now. They should be acknowledged, but it's just, I said it during my stream when I was watching it, I'm like, you can devote a fourth of your show to mobile. At most, a fourth of your show. I understand. You need to make money somehow. You could have mobile games somehow. Absolutely, that could be part of your market, but don't spend more than a fourth of your show. So
the problem with mobile games is that, there is a market out there for them. There are people that want to see more mobile games. They're not the people that are watching your E3 conference, though.
Correct.
They're the casual audience who are going to see a mobile game either on an app store or something along those lines, or hear about it from someone else. They're going to download it, they're going to play it. They're not the core audience who are waiting for the next big console exclusive or experience. And that is something that I'm hoping they will figure out for next year.
Oh, not to mention, I almost forgot to mention, the enthusiastic crowd.
That guy had to have been paid. He had to have. That had to be planted. That was ridiculous.
You know what I was thinking? Maybe it's not that they were paid. Maybe there was a group that went in there that they got freaking acid. Like, they got on some, like, they're hardcore fans. So they just wanted to amplify the experience by taking something beforehand. But yeah, they're just literally, all right, so we're developing. Woo!
They couldn't get a sentence out before they just started going, woo, yeah, go on. Love you, Todd.
I think we both agree Doom Eternal was our highlight. I don't know about least favorite. Just the mobile stuff, I'd say that was my least favorite thing.
Least favorite, everything in between the start and the end.
Yes. Then we got Ubisoft. So I will spoil this basically. Bethesda and Ubisoft, easily the weakest conferences this year. No question.
I would agree.
But I will say that Ubisoft, I think, had a better put together show.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is not like the content, but like the way they presented it, the way they handled everything. They dabbled a bit into mobile, but not made it the entire presentation. And they started off on a seriously high note with like an insanely ambitious game being on Watch Dogs Legion, to which is one of my highlights of E3 period. I don't know how the hell they're gonna do that.
I actually have to wonder if Watch Dogs Legion was their ending game, because I believe it got leaked before the show, and I think they might have moved it to, because it felt like one of those games that you would end a conference with, like compared to God and Monsters that they ended it with, that didn't have the same impact.
Which could have been cool, which could have been a good end if they just elaborated on it. Instead of just assuming it's a good mic drop.
I mean, it might be a good game. I mean, it looks interesting. I like mythology, but they didn't show enough. There was no gameplay. But
there's nothing to get excited about for it other than, Watch Dogs Legion was awesome. That was such a great start. And then the rest of the, and I think that's the problem, is that the rest of the show was following that, you know?
All the shooting games. I was happy to see Just Dance come back. I know that's a really it's just one of those things, like, you kind of expect it at Ubisoft's conference, and I always look forward to the really cheesy dances that they pull off. It's always nice and entertaining.
Did you notice that it's releasing on Wii?
Yeah. I don't know why, but Ubisoft, they really just want to keep supporting the Wii. It's not going to die until they let it.
Like, not the Wii U, but the Wii. So anyways, what about the rest of the show? What'd you think?
Shooting stuff, I was not necessarily interested in. My problem with all the shooting content, and I can't remember it all by name because it very much blends together, but I believe they did like a bit on Rainbow Six Siege, then they went to another shooter game, then they went back to Rainbow Six Siege, and my thought was, why not just put the games in one block, get it all out of the way, rather than spreading it out across your conference? Because once a game like vanishes from your conference and it goes to like the next thing, I don't want to see it again. I want to see something new, and then they just, here's more Rainbow Six, and then something else, and there's more Rainbow Six.
The only thing I could think of is just For Honor. They had an expansion for Honor, which they gave no details on. But that's the only thing.
It was a cool trailer. The For Honor thing was great. I've personally not played the game, but I can tell that trailer looked really good, and I think people are going to be hyped for it. But aside from that and Watch Dogs and Just Dance, it was all shooting games.
Just Dance, that's right. Yeah. I thought it was cool that they got John Berthal there, the guy that's in Ghost Recon. That was pretty cool.
Oh, right. That was the, Ubisoft was the people who had the, like the TV show that they were making about... about a game dev. That looked promising. I actually really liked the little teaser that they showed of that, and I will probably tune in and watch that just out of sheer curiosity when it comes out. But I just
debate if this was the place to show that. It was just there for me. I was just like, okay, I'm interested, but... Overall, I would agree that just a lot of shoot 'em ups. There's no Assassin's Creed this year to kind of, get rid of that shoot 'em ups area. They had a neat orchestra though to start with. I thought that was kind of cool.
That was fun.
It was fun, and they only showed like 1 or 2 mobile apps, but one other thing I wanted your take on. They have their Ubisoft thing, which EA does as well, where you pay the subscription, you get to play all their games, which can be neat, but I'm just like, why do you partner this with Google Stadia? So you have to, I guess that's already been a thing for like Xbox and PlayStation, where you pay for this thing to play all of like EA's games or whatever. But it's like, so we have to pay this and then pay this to do this.
It just feels like there's so many, I don't know, I guess I just don't like when all of my games are on all these different launchers and you have like 10 different launchers on your on your computer dashboard that you have to launch up, and each of them has different games. I prefer having them all in one place. So it just... and also, no offense to Ubisoft, but I don't think their gaming lineup was that stellar. I don't think there was anything that really...
Unless you're like a huge Tom Clancy fan, that's the thing. If you're a huge fan of that, then you got a lot this year. Congratulations.
Yeah, if you're a Tom Clancy fan, you well, actually no, because they'll be complaining that there was no Splinter Cell. So
true. And that was the one thing I was personally hoping for. I was really hoping that would be their mic drop, because there hasn't been a Splinter Cell game in a long ass time. It would have been another shooter, but I admit for that publisher, that would have been a big deal.
Yeah. We got Sam Fisher from Splinter Cell in the mobile game.
In a mobile, yeah. Yeah, easily. I think we're both in agreement that like Watch Dogs was the coolest part of this. Arguably, that's even one of the coolest parts of E3 in general.
I have to ask though, just before we continue, what were your thoughts on Miss Helen Dashwood from Watch Dogs Legion, the old woman from the trailer?
Oh, it was so hilarious. It was so hilarious. It's not only for comedic effect, I'm sure it's for comedic effect, of course, but I think it also really sells that idea that literally anyone can be a part of your Legion here. And there's even an interview that they say, there's like the, I think it's IGN's, yeah, it's IGN's, and he goes like, so will there actually be any dogs in this game? Like as a joke, and he's like,
no.
Yeah, they said no, and they said no, but they said because similar to Odyssey, you know, Super Mario Odyssey, it's like, if we put a dog in here, they'd be part of your Legion. I was like, that's hilarious! That's hilarious! So I think that's the point of the old lady. Like, the old lady sold that all the more.
I think when they were flashing through characters, I think I saw maybe some, like, not school children, but at least I think, teenagers as well, and adults, and all different ages, shapes, sizes. And for me, obviously, I'm a little bit biased because it is set in London, and obviously being British, I can respect all the work that went into the voices and the locations, and just all of that was just completely nailed.
Now we can finally get to the people that saved E3, in my opinion anyways. So Square Enix happened, and you kick us one off. Like, what'd you think of Square Enix's show overall this year?
Overall, I thought it was really good. I do think it got a little weaker towards the end. I thought that it started off so strong with Final Fantasy VII Remake, and then I think by the time we hit Avengers, I think people were a little bit tired, because they were chucking so many like remasters and ports and new JRPGs right at us that I just got very exhausted towards the end because there were just so many of them. But Avengers was a good ending point as well.
They had a similar effect here as Ubisoft in the way that a lot of people love Tom Clancy. For Ubisoft, a lot of people love Final Fantasy for Square Enix. And there was a lot of Final Fantasy in this presentation. And that's one thing I could say, like, if you're a Square Enix fan, this show killed it.
This was like your show.
Yeah, I mean, this show was...
I mean, I'm not the biggest Square fan, but as someone who does like Final Fantasy, I like Final Fantasy VII, love 8. I also am a massive fan of Final Fantasy XIV, the online game, so seeing the massive trailer for the new expansion was just very exciting, because I could actually understand what was going on and what was being shown. I
thought it was a kick-ass trailer, by the way. Love that trailer.
It was so good. Yeah. And I think if you're a Final Fantasy fan, this was probably the best show you've ever watched. But if you're a fan of Square Enix's other properties, like maybe like Tomb Raider, or maybe you wanted to see like Chrono Trigger come back or something like that. Who would have wanted that? I wonder. Then it wasn't as exciting. Like, if you're not a Final Fantasy fan, this was probably a rough.
Yeah, and that's why I say, like, because the big game for Square Enix is Final Fantasy, so that's why, like, as a Square Enix show, this couldn't have been any better. But on a general sense, then it was good, because they had Avengers, they had this new thing I liked, I think it's called, like, Oninaki or something. I thought that looked cool.
That was actually shown off it was either a Nintendo Direct or a Nintendo Indies Direct a few months ago, so it wasn't a new game, it had already shown up before. But I'm glad we finally got a release date for it, I believe.
Yeah, and we got a bigger trailer for Dragon Quest Builders 2. But the key thing that made this conference so much better for certain than Ubisoft, Bethesda, in my opinion anyways, is they showed a crap ton of gameplay. Gameplay. You want gameplay? Here's some gameplay.
Everything had gameplay. My only problem, the one game I really wanted gameplay for, which was the Avengers game, we got like barely any gameplay. It felt
barely any. Yeah, we got some, and we will get more this week. Because I think that they said it's gonna be playable on the show floor, and if whenever a game's playable on the show floor, that means we're gonna get gameplay of it. So but
everything else was brilliant, and the gameplay just blow out for Final Fantasy VII Remake though. That was,
dude, I was not expecting them to pull the curtain as much as they did on that. I just did a video about this, like my most hype moments of E3, and I personally, I'm not really a Final Fantasy person.
I never grew up with Final Fantasy VII either. It was my brother, I believe, was the one who played it a lot on the PlayStation when we were younger, so I don't even have much of an attachment to it, but even I was hyped. Even I got that.
It's because of how much they pulled that curtain, you know? How much they demonstrated it, how you could switch between characters and the slowdown system. Like, they actually got into talking about the game, which is something that was absent from E3 until now. And the one game that they didn't show gameplay for was Outriders or something like that, where it's like the thing from Bulletstorm or whatever.
I forgot that one existed.
yeah. But the cool thing was that even though that was the only cinematic trailer, what did they do after that? They pulled a vidoc video that shows the development team working on it and explaining kind of what it is, and they're just like, thank you, you know? That was the thing about Square Enix that really blew me away, is that they showed gameplay, and if they didn't have gameplay, they elaborated on it.
And this was coming from last year, where arguably they had the worst presentation, and they've just like shut up. They knew what they needed to deliver this year. They had the goods, and they just gave it to us in spades.
Yes. The show as a whole, I thought, was a great Square Enix presentation, but I will say that Avengers project, they try to end with it, which is funny because that was the only thing that's like was 100% confirmed for this. It wasn't quite the game I hoped, is what I will say. But then again, we don't know enough about it still. We don't know enough about it, in my opinion.
I mean, I brought this up with my friends after we'd watched it. We obviously, everyone's fans of the Avengers. The movies and the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been a part of.
There's no better time to promote this.
Yeah, I mean, right after Endgame. The problem is that this game, for me, it feels like if you were going to get an Avengers game back when the first Avengers movie released, and not now, because obviously all the character designs are a lot closer to that original Avengers movie. It is literally the original 5 Avengers, ignoring Hawkeye. May he rest in peace.
For some reason.
I feel like the graphics didn't really work as well as they should have. I feel like they were a little bit lower res than I think they could be.
Yeah, and that's not me. I think the graphics are great. It's just the art direction. That's my thing. I just think the art direction is a little bit sketchy.
I will say, though, that just before we move on, that moment where they said that all future DLC for that game was free, no loot boxes, no microtransactions, I will applaud them for that. That was a brilliant moment, and they just flexed on every other company that came to E3 this year.
It's so funny that would be a hype announcement to do in this day and age. That's so funny. Overall, a super solid conference, seriously, and it's just like you said, coming from like a time that last year they arguably were the worst conference, whereas this year they were easily one of the best. Biggest highlight moment for me was for sure Final Fantasy VII. Lowest moment, I don't know if I really had a lowest moment. I can't really think of anything I personally don't care about Dragon Quest, but I still thought that was a neat look. So
I know my lowest moment was when they went and showed the Square Enix indie group, like the indie games. There was the car game and the war game. And my issue with Square Enix is I don't think they know how to utilize their indies properly. They don't know how to show them off right, because you look at companies like Nintendo and companies like Xbox, and they're showing off their indies and they're looking great.
So true.
But for some reason with Square Enix, whenever they show off their indies, it just doesn't make a splash. It doesn't make a statement, and I don't think anyone really comes out remembering or even thinking about the indies. And it's a real shame, because the little car game looked like something you might mess around, maybe buy for like a kid, like your kids or something, if you're a parent. Okay,
so let's move on to the final show of E3, which was the Nintendo Direct, which is technically not a show of E3, but it's part of it.
It's there. They put E3 in the title.
They even title it E3 2019, so it's like, if you're gonna title it that, you're part of this. And I'm sure this was excruciatingly exciting for you, because you're the Nintendo boy, but
oh yes, as a Nintendo fan, like, this hit all of the things that I wanted it to hit. This was brilliant. Just.
So we might have some. I would love to. You know what? I want to start with this because we might have one little disagreement or whatever. But for me, I felt like a lot of this direct was a lot of third-party stuff, and well, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I feel like there wasn't as much first party, but then I'm thinking about it. I'm like, no, there was Luigi's Mansion. There
was a lot of first party. Like all the first party games that we knew about were talked about, aside from I guess maybe Bayonetta 3, which it technically isn't first party, but I guess since Nintendo helps fund the franchise now, I guess people kind of consider it.
But you know what I mean, like Mario, Zelda, Kirby, you know, like those main definitive Nintendo IPs. That we lacked a lot of that this year, I felt like, anyways.
I mean,
yet they were there.
Zelda was there.
Yeah,
Zelda was definitely there. Yeah, we'll get to that. And I think with the Switch, I think it's actually more important that they focus on the third parties now, if only because I'm still burned by how the Wii U had no third parties, and the fact they are getting so much support now. The fact that they got The Witcher 3 on Nintendo Switch, like that really just says it all. Like the third party support for the Switch is absolutely insane, and I think the library of games that you are going to be able to take on the go, it's increasing, and it's getting better and better each year. Maybe they could have spaced out things better, because I think it was the very middle of it. You know, we get Witcher, we get Resident Evil, we get there was two other things I forgot. Why did they do that massive Resident Evil trailer for Resident Evil 5
so exaggerated.
Like,
that was so exaggerated.
I respect the trailer, but it should have been for either like a new game
or something more fitting, you know, because they made it seem like you're playing Resident Evil 1 and it's a horror thing, but that's already on the Switch.
The problem with that, though,
but then they promote this action game.
Resident Evil 1 had already been released at that point, like last month, so it was just kind of going over stuff that we already knew about, and that was a bit ridiculous. One thing I didn't see coming, I don't know if you've ever played this franchise, but No More Heroes 3. Have you ever played the No More Heroes games?
I haven't played it, have you?
I haven't, but I know of them, and I was extremely excited because nobody thought No More Heroes 3 was really going to happen. And the first two games are quite critically acclaimed. People really love them. And then when last year they revealed that, there was going to be a spin-off title, people thought, that means the series is probably dead. And then they just come out with No More Heroes 3. And I know there are people out there who are
exploding,
who screamed at that, who just blew up inside. The other thing you mentioned about how there weren't a lot of third parties there, even though there were, it felt like there weren't. I think it was because, for some reason, they decided to do that Mario Maker 2 Direct last month, and they decided to do the Pokemon Sword and Shield Direct earlier this month. True. So those two, which are arguably the two biggest IPs that Nintendo has aside from Zelda, weren't really there.
But what was neat is that they just did a mention to Sword and Shield, but
and
you're right. They had their own
one little glimpse at the end of the sizzle reel at the very end of the Direct.
And they kind of started off on that note too, with the whole reveal of Dragon Quest being on the Switch, and then that would lead into, you know, Dragon Quest for being ported to the Switch again. Hey, just a reminder, Dragon Quest is coming to the Switch.
This was a promotional pick. Please buy Dragon Quest. We really want it to succeed in the West.
They got their Japanese pick, and then they got their West pick. It's exactly what the sandwich was. We're not going to be able to discuss these in great detail, but just Dragon Quest, I don't have a problem with it. It's another sword character. That's my only issue. That's my only issue. Is that
and what everyone pointed out that the sword character he shared a lot of animations with Link, so people were just kind of like, he's probably got a bunch of moves that Link has. It's just a sword.
But they got some neat stuff like the menu at the bottom and tons of unique skins that just are the main characters. But this for certain rules out frickin' Sora and Geno, in my opinion.
I would say that
because they have a representative from each publisher or whatever.
With the Smash speculation, I would say Square Enix is now out. I mean, Geno I think was already out because he was a spirit in Ultimate, and I do think that is like a hard disk confirmation. And then obviously everyone was hoping for a Microsoft character. And we got Banjo, which is the character that everyone has wanted for like 20 years now, like ever since Melee. Even though I'm not the biggest Banjo fan, I don't even play the games that much. I barely have. But even I could tell how important this character coming back to a Nintendo console and finally coming back to like Smash I got how important that was, and I think some
what
people
a neat way to represent that too, though, with like the former Rare guys, just like, we remember you.
Yeah, when they were just cheering in the window, and they were just
that was so
hyped.
cute. That was so cute. The Dragon Quest character, I would say, was the good cross promotion move, you know, because you're having Dragon Quest stuff come to the Switch, so they're gonna have to do that with a character or two. So Animal Crossing got delayed, which wasn't too big. I totally understood that happening, honestly.
I'm not bothered by the delay, because obviously they explained on Twitter very recently that it was because they wanted to make sure their employees were working healthily and that they were getting enough rest.
And that's important. But Luigi's Mansion 3 looked freaking cool. I love that it looks just like Luigi's Mansion 1. And again,
they confirmed that the gameplay was more like Luigi's Mansion 1 than 2 as well. So like restarting levels and all that. It's actually a fully explorational or explorable even hotel.
It was a great direct, and they did hit their first parties. They did, even though maybe it was the structuring of it. Maybe that's why I felt like the third party thing was a bit prominent. But and then they just, they could have mic drop with Banjo, and then they freaking mic drop with, we actually have one more thing.
Yeah, it just comes up and whispers close to. And not only is it like a Breath of the Wild sequel, but the atmosphere in that trailer was so uncomfortably eerie that because my favorite Zelda game is Majora's Mask, because it's got that really creepy atmosphere. And it's a lot darker. And then Aonuma comes out and says in an interview, "Oh, it's going to be darker than Majora's Mask." So
Jesus Christ.
What are we in for? What is going on? And Zelda has short hair now. It's adorable.
I was about to say Zelda has short hair. Yeah. Yeah, so that was, I will give easily Nintendo something. They, for sure, of like all the conferences this year, they had the biggest like mic drop. They had the biggest end. No doubt. Like, no doubt they had the biggest end.
They were doing. They know. They know how to rile us up, damn it.
Now, like, calm down. Let's calm down. Let's calm down.
Take a sip of water.
I'm at a bit of a loss, but what would you say was your most favorite, briefly, and your least favorite, briefly?
As in show?
For the E3 shows. Okay,
my least favorite is Bethesda. I just didn't find anything interesting about it. I tuned out for most of the direct. Of course, it's not direct, it's a conference. And I vaguely only remember Doom Eternal, so that probably doesn't bode well. And my favorite, shocker, Nintendo, because I was tuned in the entire time. All the games I wanted to see were there. Most of the games were actually 2019 release dates, which is really nice, because I'm really sick of all the other conferences going 2020, and like almost everything had gameplay. So,
and see, I was like, shit, I don't have the answer before getting in this conversation, because I have a hard time deciding. But for both least favorite and most favorite, because like easily the least favorites between Bethesda and Ubisoft, no question to me. Yeah, I'd say Bethesda, just because they it was just because of the middle. That middle was so dragging to me. They had a nice start, and oh god. Okay, so it's between Square and Nintendo for me. As much as I want it to be Microsoft, it was just, again, a safe show. It was still good. But I'm gonna be kind of bully. I'm just gonna make us different and say I'll say Square. I loved how much gameplay they did, and they actually and it was nice to see them have a presentation this year as well, because they haven't gotten to do that. They got to fill Sony's slot. I don't know if you knew that, but they filled the absence of Sony and got to have their own stage and everything. It was nice to see them have a presentation. They gave shit tons of gameplay, and when they didn't, they elaborated on it. I was really pleased with that conference. Like, Nintendo had more for me on a personal level, but I'm just like, judging wise, I'm happy for you this year, Square. I'm really happy for you. Any final words before we head out here? I do want to quickly just shout out Star Wars and the little 30 minutes that they had with their little EA Play, and they showed off Star Wars, and that was such a good. I'm very excited for that game. So I just wanted to. Yeah, I thought it looks cool too. It looks cool, and there's stuff from interviews as well that you learn that's outside of that segment, which is really neat. And also just want to say thank you for having me. I really enjoy chatting with new people about games and the things we all love. And overall, regardless of what you thought of E3, we're getting a lot of really cool new games, and we should all be really hyped that we're getting new games. So yes, share your thoughts and check out Billybo here. There should be his channel popping up and graphics and so on. Billy, thank you so much for being here. Yeah, it'll be an end screen, so on.
No worries, man. As I said, I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun.
Check him out. There's a video down below that maybe he'll tell me to link, but his channel there, and then me here, and then video here. So check those out. Catch you later.